Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on twitter.com at Braden Gall. I'm not sure why I said my name that way, guys. How are you guys?
Great. Fantastic for 9 a.m.
That is Michael Gallagher. You can follow him on Twitter at MGSports_.
I'll introduce myself then. I'm Emma Lingan. You can follow me at Emma_Lingan.
We need to get the intros down because I never know if Braden's going to introduce all of us, if we're going to go left to right on the screen, what we're doing. So we're a mess.
It's just like me with my in-laws and my brother-in-laws. We're just trying to keep everyone as uncomfortable and on as edge as possible. We just want everyone to be awkward. That's the goal, and I'm the king of that. You two are far smoother. So thank you guys all for joining us. Of course, already in the comments here on the live stream, number one comment before the show even started from Max, please no Marner. We will get there. Nate already with a couple of questions. Nate, good to see you, of course, today. Ryan McDonagh, the big news. Barry Trotz getting the offseason started for the Nashville Predators with a big move of trading the 35, soon to be 35-year-old defenseman back to Tampa Bay, getting a couple of draft picks out of the deal. Everyone in gold should be rooting for Tampa Bay to be awfully terrible this year. We'll get to what the corresponding moves could be because they have a boatload of cap space now heading into the free agency period. And of course, yes, we have to mention that player in Toronto. He shall remain unnamed in this portion of the podcast. Buster says, let the fun begin. That's right, folks. Let's roll. So
I vote we call Marner Voldemort from now on. Just to keep it interesting.
All right, I like it. And then, of course, what's the starting blue line going to actually look like? Because if you include Tyson Barrie and Alex Carrier, which last week on the show we said, hey, Matt, not sure these guys should be back. The contracts, etc., probably not coming back. You now maybe have 3 of the top 6, 3 of the top 7 defensemen now off of this team. So what does the blue line look like for next year? What are some of the other moves that you two might recommend Barry Trotz do? Some of the reasonings behind the trade and the big move are interesting that I think are worth discussing. And obviously the Cup Finals, semifinals, conference finals, are set. So we've got 3 1 seeds and Connor McDavid. I don't think fans, objective fans, hard to ask for much more than the talent and the quality we're going to get in the 2 conference finals. So with that being said, a couple of quick programming notes here before we get going. Michael is on much needed and much deserved vacation next week. I am on much needed and much deserved vacation next week, and Emma's on much needed and much deserved vacation next week. So we will not have a program for you next week, but we will be back in 2 weeks. So stay tuned. Make sure you give us a thumbs up on the YouTube page, little subscription there. And we would do it. We would appreciate it. And of course, rate, review, subscribe on the podcast app. And if you're on Twitter right now or Facebook, go ahead and hit the retweet and the share button. We would appreciate that. Let's get all the folks coming in. Nate, yes, this is exactly right. Congrats on the vacation. I agree. I think all of us deserve it. So
it was a long damn season, guys.
I would just like to say it's actually only Braden and Mike who are going on vacation. And as a result, I'm just getting a break from the show for a week. So I'm not getting, I guess I don't deserve vacation, but I get a break from talking to you two for a week. So I guess that's good.
And my wife would agree that is quite a vacation, not having to talk to me. So also quick note here. This episode of the Gold Standard is brought to you by our wonderful and amazing friends, 8th and Roast. 8th and Roast Coffee here locally in Nashville, Tennessee. You can get their beans at every single grocery store around the city, locally owned, super high level roasters. They do a great job. And of course, they got 4 locations over there on Charlotte Avenue. They've got one on West End and Vanderbilt. They've got one at the airport, which I will soon be going to. I don't look forward to much at B&A, but I do look forward to a good cup of coffee. And 8th and Roast has got you covered there. Good breakfast sandwiches and the OG location, of course, down there on 8th Avenue. So go check out our great friends, 8th and Roast. They're a great partner of 440 Media, and a little shout out to them today on the show. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay. So first and foremost, before we get into the details and the why of Barry Trotz making a big move, what were your initial reactions when you saw the news? I know we were texting about it. What were your thoughts when you saw the actual, you got first word of Ryan McDonagh being moved to Tampa Bay? They give up a 4th round pick and Ryan McDonagh, the 2nd round pick and the 7th round pick. So just the decision to move him, before we get into why he asked it and all this other stuff, just what were your thoughts on the move in general?
I'll let Emma go first.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think I can speak for everyone here when I say none of us saw it coming. It was definitely surprising. So much so that when I saw the email come through with the press release about it, I like very quickly just read the headline and I just saw the words like trade Ryan McDonagh and Tampa Bay, and I for a second couldn't remember the specifics of the deal that sent McDonagh to Nashville a couple years ago. So I was like, wait, did that deal include like future considerations? And like we're just learning what future considerations are. Like I thought it had to do with that. Like I didn't fully read, and then I'm like, oh no, they traded him to Tampa Bay. Okay. So it was definitely unexpected.
Yeah, I was very surprised as well, and I think my initial reaction was, man, poor fucking Roman Yossi. That dude is going to be doing everything by himself next year because without a Ryan McDonagh, like Roman Yossi's job gets exponentially harder. And I know we're going to get into what the blue line is going to look like next year, but I mean, you're looking at Roman Yossi carrying a group of mid 20-year-olds, depending on obviously they can trade and they can sign players and stuff like that. But my immediate reaction was I was surprised. I was like, I want to see what the trade package was, and getting a second round pick back is pretty good value. I feel like for McDonagh, and also like Nashville basically has Tampa Bay's 2024 and 25 draft classes. I mean, how many more picks can Tampa Bay send Nashville? And I also thought too, putting into perspective the trade that they sent McDonagh, or they got McDonagh for, and then the trade they just got sending him back. Like you basically parted with two fourth round picks, Grant Mismash and Philippe Myers, and you got 2 years of Ryan McDonagh and a second round pick back. Like that's pretty good GMing, and that's a tag team effort with Poyle and Trotz. So I thought it was really good value, but yeah, I was surprised that they traded him just because I thought McDonagh was their best defenseman in the playoffs, and he's very clearly was a big part of what made this defense work when it did work. So
Brad says, "Don't worry, they still have Luke Schenn."
Yeah,
we'll get to the starting lineup in a second. Emma, go ahead.
Oh no!
All right, so I like you guys. I'm losing. This is why I need a vacation, folks. You guys, Preston says you guys aren't excited for Yossi to be paired with Luke Schenn. Okay, all right. This is not going to be an anti-Luke Schenn show. Okay, Luke Schenn
I want to put it out there. I actually really like Luke Schenn, the person. He's a really nice guy, and if you ever talk to him, like if you see him out at a bar, please talk to him. He's a super cool dude. I just want to put that out there.
Like the lonely kid in the corner. Please just go talk to Luke Schenn, somebody. No, I'm talking not to either of you two, but I mean sort of the commenters here, because again, this is partly our fault. Like we created the Luke Schenn meme on the show, and now everybody in the audience is taken to it, which we do love. We love you for it. We love you for that, guys. I was surprised when I heard it, and then after just spending a second thinking about it, it does not make their defense better next year. It doesn't. But if you look at clearing, over $13 million in cap space over the next 2 seasons on a 35 and 36-year-old, where at the end of that contract, that last year is probably not going to be worth it. And there's a chance the drop-off comes this year. So while I don't think it's going to happen this year, he's as Gover likes to call them, serial winners, right? I mean, he is a guy that just wins, knows how to win, and is a great, he had couple of the best games of the season in terms of the entire NHL this year for them. And so you can't take him off the team, his experience and leadership and talent, and just be like, yeah, they're as good. But
I also want to point out, too, another part of this that I think is kind of a little bit overlooked is it came out that McDonagh asked to be traded back to Tampa Bay. And that contract was going to be impossible to move because he has a no-trade clause. He would have to waive it, and because of his salary. And I also think, too, see other players seeing Barry Trotz go out of his way to accommodate a player like that, I think is going to go really far in terms of attracting other players to come to Nashville.
So go ahead, Emma.
I agree. I also think I maybe have a more slightly cynical approach to that. I mean, yes, I totally agree with everything you've said about other players seeing that. And, it's a tremendous effort by Barry to try and do right by a player. I will also I don't want to just brush past the fact that McDonagh did ask for a trade, though, because I think Barry Trotz, one thing about Barry Trotz, he does not want anyone who does not want to be here. And for me, and again, like Mike said about Luke Schenn, Ryan McDonagh, I'm sure a lovely person, but it was clear to me in 2 years working with him, particularly his first year in Nashville was also my first year in Nashville. I spent a lot of time with him between travel and everything. To me, he, at least in the, behind the scenes in the background, McDonagh took every opportunity to like make sure everyone knew that he didn't want to be here. And not in like a, like, oh, fuck this place. I mean, he's not going to be that like outward about it, but like it was very clear with like body language and comments and things that like he did not want. And it wasn't a surprise.
Why do you think that was then?
Well,
just championship caliber team?
It wasn't a surprise. No, I mean, I think it was a variety of things. I mean, if you look back at the trade that sent him to Nashville, that's where that no trade clause was. He had to waive it to get sent to Nashville because Brisbois basically told him, hey, like, we have to trade you. Like, you are a cap casualty. Like, we need to get rid of you. And I don't think either side wanted it, and there was a lot of, I don't know, there was a lot of kind of backlash about that and kind of noise around that with just him, basically being unhappy, and like understandably so, because if I was signed to a contract of that caliber and then to have my GM and come in and tell me, just kidding, we got to move you, like, especially when I'm established, I've won 2 Stanley Cups, I have a family, like, it's just, it is hard. So like, I'm not saying it's not justified at all for him to not want to be in Nashville, but like, or for him to not want to have left Tampa. However, like, as part of that modified trade clause or no trade clause that he got, he was able to kind of pick his own short list of teams that he would be like willing to be traded to. Nashville was one of them. So it's like, okay, I get that you're not, I get that you didn't want this to happen. Like, and understandably so. I don't blame you for that, but you're here now. So like, can we just...
Well, I'd also add to that too. I mean,
he played well though, so you can't argue on the ice.
No, and it's not even on ice stuff. Like I think on the ice and in the locker room, he was great. Like, I think he kind of did what was asked of him. But I think as far as beyond that, like in his, it was just little things, like made it clear, like he wasn't going to go out of his way to like be nice to the media or to like talk to people or to build relationships, really. Like, it was very clear that he was not happy to be there, and he wanted everyone to know that.
I think he looked at it as he was only here until his contract ended, then he's going back to Tampa because that's home for him. So it's kind of understandable in that sense. And also too, you got to think, you take a guy who has won multiple cups with the Lightning, gets traded to Nashville in the middle of basically beginning of a rebuild, and I'm not blaming him for not wanting to be here, if that makes sense, but also like he also waived his no trade clause and accepted the trade to Nashville, so like he knew what he was getting into as well. And when he got traded here, like they had just signed Niederreiter, like they still had aspirations of being kind of a playoff contender. And then we saw the full fire sale going on 2 trade deadlines ago and stuff. And I think this year, he saw the potential for this team, but he realized they're still a couple years away from like actually being legit contenders in the playoffs. And he was probably like, you know what, I got 2 or 3 years left. I want to go back home. So I don't really blame him for that. But I do think that it's not, I wasn't in, backstage like Emma was, but I got the sense talking to Ryan McDonagh that like his personality wasn't a perfect fit here in Nashville. And sometimes like that plays a role into it too. Like you can have all the on ice success you want, but if you're not happy, if you don't feel like you like fit in with kind of like your teammates and everyone else and the media market and all that stuff, like that plays a role into it as well.
I think the personality piece is big because you need, like, again, I just think about like how beloved he was or is in Tampa. And understandably, yes, obviously he won 2 Stanley Cups with them, of course, but it's not even just about that. Like people, I remember when it was announced he was coming to Nashville, and people I know from Tampa who work for the Lightning or cover the Lightning are like, oh my gosh, you're going to love this guy. He's amazing. He's so fantastic to work with. And then he comes and I'm kind of like, really? Like, I mean, he wasn't bad to work with in any way, but he was not quite to the level that he had been hyped up a lot. And I didn't really see that.
And if this was a sports talk radio show, we would spend the entire hour debating what this means about the Nashville Predators culture. Why does Ryan McDonagh hate the Nashville Predators? And like, that's not what it is. But there is a question to be asked about that. Like, should this reflect on the Predators? And I think the answer could absolutely be no. The answer could be no. He misses his home. He wants to be in that organization. That's where he's played most of his career. And that's where his family is, and that's what he wants to be. And obviously Tampa may be closer to winning a cup, although I don't know. So it could be that simple. It could also just, look, the Predators aren't a great personality fit, or they're not close to winning a championship. Neither of which is a huge knock on the franchise in any way, shape, or form.
Well, he's also going to be 35 next month too. So, I mean, he's getting closer to the end of his career. I get the trade from the Preds' perspective. I was sort of like, okay, wait a second. What are you doing, Barry? And then as soon as you start to think about it, you're like, wait a second, $13.5 million, a 35 and 36-year-old, a guy who's maybe wants to be back home. You can upgrade a pick out of the deal. Again, I don't think
if you're able to clear that kind of cap space, like if you're able to find someone who will take that contract, for sure.
So like, is the team better in the first 30, 40, 50 games next year? Probably not. But are they better in the long term? Absolutely. And it's not meant to, again, it's not like all these things can be true. Like Ryan McDonagh is aging. He would make them better, but like, it's also not going to be a great contract. And also he just wants to be home, and it's not necessarily a reflection of the Predators organization. Like, all that stuff could be true. And it's just sort of one of those times where, and at the end of the day, Barry Trotz, to your original point, Emma, shows players that he's willing to listen, because when Ryan McDonagh comes up to him at exit interviews and asks to be traded, well, Barry Trotz went out and made it happen. And it was the first big move of the offseason. So I don't think it's the one any of us were expecting, but it happens. And now they've got a ton of space in the lineup and in the cap. So ultimately, that's our follow-up question to all of this, which is, what's the corresponding move, if there is one? Or is it a variety of moves that we think? I mean, now what's the total cap space? Like 26. They had 19. Now they're up to like 27, 25 and a half, $26 million in cap space. Certainly plenty of room for a high-priced 90-point scoring winger of any kind. But ultimately, is there one corresponding move? Do you think Barry Trotz is attaching this to one move? He claimed at press availability that this was way more about the request to be moved rather than the salary cap space. And I'm like, sure thing, big guy. So I think it's both. You made a player happy and got yourself $13 million. What is the next move? What do you want to see him do with all this cap space?
We doing specific names or what?
I think you can start strategy if you want. And then inside of those strategic decisions, if there's players, go for it.
I think strategy-wise, from what talking to a couple people, as soon as I saw the McDonagh trade, I sent out some text yesterday, and talking to some people, the sense that I got was the Vancouver series really opened Trotz's eyes to the defense needs to get bigger. They need to get a little bit stronger. They can't be pushed around. Like, yes, you need speed and skill. You need your Roman Josis. You need your guys, your Spencer Stastnys. But Stastny is a little bit small. He gets pushed around. We saw that he got injured. Like, Roman Josi has had, I don't know how many concussions because people just tee off on him. Like, you need some bigger guys. So honestly, if I'm looking at it, Nikita Zadorov is going to be a free agent. I would throw some money at him. I wouldn't overpay for him, but I would go after him hard. I mean, he's 6'6", 248. You need a guy like that. Maybe a Brady Shea. He's 6'3", 210. They were linked to Brett Pesce last year. He's 6'3", 206. Like, you need some guys. I think they only had one defenseman that was over 6 foot in the playoffs. Like, you need to get guys that are 6'2", 6'3" that can block some lanes and stuff like that. So I don't think there's one corresponding move, because again, you're looking at the blue line. You're looking at, you got Josi, Shen, Fabro, Lozon, and Stastny, who may or may not be like fully healthy depending on what's going on with him. So I mean, that to me, that worries me a little bit. That's the young and experienced. You have guys like Luke Shen that play 10, 12 minutes. You have guys like Roman Josi playing 25 minutes. I think there's more than one move, but if I'm Trotz, my first move is calling Zadorov and asking him, what's it going to take to get you in Nashville?
Yeah, I think that, like, strategy wise, I'd like to see two things happen. I'd like to see them go after like some high end scoring from, specifically a center, not a winger, a center, because that's what they need. So I would like to see that, but then I agree. I would also like to see you get some more size on the defense. Not that size is the only measure of a defenseman, but to Mike's point, it was definitely a weakness that was exposed in that Vancouver series. I mean, you need more guys. Like if they had like 2 more Jeremy Lauzons, then I think they would have been in better shape, just like size wise. Guys who can like move guys off of pucks and things like that. But for me, I don't know. I think if you can get a guy like Zadorov, if you can get him, yeah, I agree. I wouldn't overpay for him, but I would definitely throw some money at him. I would like to, I personally would throw more money at the scoring piece. Like I would throw more money at getting a scorer, and then you get, I mean, I think you can get defensemen. I like that you brought up Brady Shea and Brett Pesce. I think either of those guys would be good additions as well. I've seen Tyler Myers thrown out there too. He's going to be a free agent, but he's also 34. And it's like, I don't want to trade one 34-year-old for another.
He's also really slow too. And that doesn't help you acquire more speed or get younger.
I think
put him with Luke Shen, dynamite pairing.
I think he's a lesser version of McDonagh, to be honest with you. I mean, taller, bigger, but like lesser version.
Yeah.
Max says get a right-handed defenseman. So obviously, if you're looking at the roster, you got Yossi, Lozon, Delgaizo, Stasny all left. You got Fabro and Shen on the right. Does it have to be a right-handed, or can you move Yossi around and play him on either side?
Yossi can play anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's proven that. He did it last year, and because of McDonagh, because when McDonagh was first traded to Nashville, the original thought was it was going to be McDonagh and Ekholm on the second pairing, which would force Ekholm to move to the right side, which he did for a little bit, but it didn't work. And so, I mean, and that's not on Ekholm either. It's just like not what he's used to. But Roman doesn't really play a side. I mean, he's everywhere all the time. So
couple of comments.
I think to Emma's point too with the scoring, I do think, because Trotz was asked about the possibility of an offer sheet, and he kind of said like it's on the table, but he would stay away from it. Everyone's talking about Voldemort in trading for him and his $11 million salary. I think the $26 million in cap space is going to be used to attack multiple players, because if you add Voldemort, that makes one line better. If you go out and you trade for Martin Necas, and then you go out and say, I don't know who else is out there, RFAs, maybe a Dawson Mercer, that makes 2 lines better. I think Trotz is going to use his newfound cap space to pay players, but he's going to do multiple players. He's not going to invest $11 million in Voldemort and then be done with it. So
does it do anything for the conversation we had last week with any of these free agents? Does the fact that McDonagh's not here anymore change your decision on? I don't think it does, but I'm just asking to make sure we clarify. Like, whether it's Zucker or Carrier or Barry or any of these other names, like it doesn't change anything we decided last week, right? Like bring back Sherwood, try to bring back Lingan, and like the conversation we've had, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen, right when the McDonagh trade was announced, I saw a lot of people on social media like, oh, that must mean a deal with Carrier is closed. No, I would not count on it, because
Ryan McDonagh getting traded does not change the fact that Alex Carrier is 5'11" and gets pushed around by the Zadorovs of the world.
I mean, honestly, I think what it does definitively of anything at all is it means that Spencer Stasny is going to be on the opening day lineup. That's the only, like, if you're asking me, what does this truly mean? Now, again, we would have said that about a few players last year at the end of last season, and then they went out and signed some veteran forwards. So we'll see what happens. Some quick comments here. Carlos says, "Hello from Memphis. Go Predators." I like that. Josh says, "Hated playing against Zadorov. Bring him on." Let's see here. There's a lot of talk in the comments I see from you guys talking about sort of Askarov and LaRue. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it's interesting to see. Let's see here. Where was it Buster who said, okay, this is a lot of stuff here, so bear with me. Buster says, let's trade for Martin Necas, sign Brandon Montour, and also maybe sign a player like Jonathan Marchessault, and then see whatever else you get from a goalie trade. That's a lot of stuff, Buster. I
like the first two. I don't like going after Marchessault or Toffoli.
No, going back briefly to the Spencer Stastny conversation, I do want to point out, like, to anyone who, because I've seen some different arguments about this, just because, so like, yes, Spencer Stastny can take McDonagh's spot on the roster, but he is not a one-for-one replacement for Ryan McDonagh. So he's not necessarily going to take his spot in the lineup. But I do think that it all but solidifies that,
Yep.
you know,
And
as his spot. And
I was very careful to say it solidifies his spot on the opening day roster.
oh no, yeah, you said it. You said it perfectly. I just wanted to drive that point home because I've seen
like it.
other people saying it.
Yeah, there's no chance he's like playing that role. He's not even the same player. Add a center and see which of the young guys can take a spot. That is from Josh Wright. And by the way, first of all, just thank you to all you guys for hanging out in the comments and asking questions. And if you have any more, please, we'll take them. Make sure you swing by our good friends 8th and Roast, of course, 4 locations across the Nashville market, and you can buy their beans at a grocery store near you. Shop local, folks. Support a good local company that is owned and operated right here in Nashville. Award-winning roasting and beans. So go check out 8th and Roast. All right. The big name here on offense. It needs to be. It sounds like you think it needs to be a center. So that removes our boy in north of the border, but like it's not going away. Now the thing that Barry Trotz said was that he's not spoken to anybody. He hasn't called anybody. Pierre LeBrun then followed it up and said no one has spoken to Toronto about, I'm going to say his name once, Mitch Marner. So I think a lot of times, like the Matt Duchene thing sort of, I think, in my opinion, like ruined coverage, media, and fan brain, because Matt Duchene was such like a thing we talked about and covered and discussed, and the team and the players, and Matt Duchene was out there thirst trapping on Twitter with the Predators. Like that is such a rare thing. I don't want Predators brains and fans and media brains to be stuck in the Matt Duchene cul-de-sac with Mitch Marner. Like the fact that we're all talking about something rarely means that it's going to happen. The Matt Duchene is like the extreme one-off scenario where like he really wanted to be here, they really wanted to get him, the Preds wanted him, and everybody wanted him, and then they went and got him, and look how it turned out. Well, although he was the single season record holder for a while. I think the idea, like I think our brains are kind of like lizard brain on this, where it's like, oh, of course they're going to call Toronto and talk to Toronto. It's like it rarely works out. The obvious thing is rarely.
If you're not calling Toronto and talking to them, you're not doing your job. Like clearly, if a player like that, elite player becomes available, you have to talk to him. But let's be realistic. Like it's not happening. Especially the people that are like, oh, Saros for Marner, straight up 1-for-1. Nashville's going to have to include a lot more to make that deal work.
All right. So who's the big name center?
He's technically not available. Like he is still under contract with Toronto. So like, of course, Barry Trotz is not going to be like, yeah, I called him up and, because that would be, he's not going to publicly say that like, yes, I'm actively pursuing a player that is currently under contract with another team.
That would be tampering.
That player.
I was going to say, isn't that illegal?
Yes, exactly. So like
I wish we had the Dana White gif where he's like, it's fucking illegal.
Yeah. So
but they have to make phone calls about a top line offensive player. So who are those guys?
I like Necas. I don't know that he's a top line guy, but I think where they need the most help is in the middle six, frankly. So, I mean, I think that he would be a great addition there. And that became a lot more realistic, I think, with the McDonagh trade and that cap space that you clear. Necas fits the mold. He's young. He's 25 years old. He's fast. And he has like a ton of offensive upside. My one concern about Necas, only because I saw the beginning of his NHL career when I was in Carolina, he's been very streaky. Like when he's on, oh boy, is he on. But sometimes he'll just disappear for a while. And that is way oversimplifying. It could be due to a whole host of things. Coming into this system, coming into the Brunette system, like might change that. I don't know. But that would be my one maybe hesitation. But so he's maybe not a guy I would overpay for. But another one that I just want to throw out there, because I have seen nobody talk about it. And I'm not reporting anything or anything. I'm just like, this is just me looking at all the free agent centers coming up. I would take a serious look at Chandler Stevenson from Vegas, because he is a center. Now he's 30 years old. But compared to the free agents that Trotz signed last summer, that is very young. So he's only 30. He just finished up, I think it was a 3 or 4 year deal. He was making, His AAV was $2.75 million a year. He was a huge part of their Stanley Cup run last season. He's consistently going to put up like in the 50 to 60 point range for you, like every year. He's a center. Now he is going to be looking for a pay raise from what he was making because of his contributions.
Trotz can't take it with him, man. You're going to have to spend this money at some point.
Yeah. And so, but I'm saying a pay raise from 2.75 million is not like going to break the bank, I don't think. And he's a guy, and looking at Vegas, we all know Vegas salary cap situation. They're not going to be able to re-sign everybody. And I think personally, if I'm Kelly McCrimmon, I'm going to prioritize signing Marchessault over, like, I'm sure they would love to keep both, but I think if you need to throw money at someone, it's going to be Marchessault. I would like to maybe take a closer look at Chandler Stevenson in Nashville, just throwing it out there.
And on locker cleanout day too, Barry Trotz mentioned several times replicating kind of what Vegas does. He kind of pointed to Vegas as being like the standard of how everyone needs to use their cap space and build their roster and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if he went after a player like Stevenson. And honestly, I think that would be a solid move because Trotz also talked about building up the middle six and getting more depth and making that a better unit. And someone like Stevenson, like Emma said, he's had 120 goal season. He's not going to score you a boatload of goals, but he's consistently in the 40 to 50 assist range. He's at 50 to 60 points. You put him on the second line and you watch Luke Evangelista become a 60, 70 point player. I think if you sign a player like Stevenson, you do it for that because he's consistent and he's also going to help build up your other guys. I think if you put move Novak out to the wing and you have Stevenson centering that second line with Evangelista, both Novak and Evangelista, I think, could both put up easily 20 more points next season compared to what they had this year.
Well, and ultimately, like, we can debate the individual players, and those are both really great names. I think what's interesting is strategy-wise, I agree.
I didn't even answer my strategy-wise yet.
Well, I'm saying, like, if you think through what the options are for Trotz, like, keep the money and not spend it on stuff. Like, do you want to go like deeper into the rebuild because that's what you've done now by trading McDonagh, is actually trending in more that direction with an extra draft pick and less experience?
I don't think Trotz will spend to the cap floor because he liked having the flexibility this year, and that's something he obviously wants to leave open going in next year as well.
Right, and you want flexibility at the deadline too.
It leaves you space for that UC Saros contract extension. Just saying.
So both Christopher and Buster have both mentioned Tanner Molendyk. And while I am the president of the Tanner Molendyk fan club on this particular podcast, I doubt that he is ready. But
He's not.
I am excited for his future. Fans should be excited for his future. He's incredibly talented, and I think his personality is wired so that he will move quickly, a la Evangelista, through the system. I think he's very confident. He knows the game, high level IQ, great skill. Let's not put the cart before the horse here. That is a player that was drafted last year.
I'm excited to see him in Milwaukee. I'm very excited for that.
I'll say this on Molendyk. Andrew Burnett wanted Molendyk on the roster last year, and Barry Trotz had to be like, no, we are going to over marinate some of these guys, is his famous phrase. But Andrew Burnett wanted Molendyk on the roster last year, and I think that's fantastic if you see that happening, because that shows me that he knows what Molendyk can do, and he knows that he's the exact kind of player they need in this system. I do think what Emma was saying, like, he's going to be great in Milwaukee. He's not ready yet. He's not ready for the NHL. He needs at least a year in the AHL, and I know fans hate hearing that, like, oh, it's going to be at least one more year before we see some of these guys, but he's close. But he still needs one more year of development. He needs, like, there's a difference between making a playoff run with Saskatoon and then going and adjusting to playing a pro game, and he needs that time.
He also doesn't fill that size need that we were just talking about. Like, he's a fantastic skater, great skill, but he's not big.
I honestly, I think it's very simple with the $7 million a year you get from McDonagh's contract is you go sign two players. Probably a $4 million-ish center and a $2 million-ish, $2.5 million-ish defenseman. Like, that's probably what they're going to do. And then you still have $19 million more to make decisions on other things. So I just think you've traded one for two. The question is, are those two going to make your team deeper and more balanced across the board? And I would say probably with McDonagh at that age, certainly the following year. there's no question that the Predators will be better with the two players in 2026 versus this year. Maybe McDonagh would have been better for them, but who knows? But again, I don't know how much Stevenson would cost, but is $4.5 million going to get him signed? I mean, I don't know. But you could go get a $2 million defenseman and a $4.5 million center, and there's your Ryan McDonagh money. So I think strategically, the move starts to make a whole lot of sense when you start to put a more balanced roster on the ice next year.
I do like the idea of trading for what's his name? Drawing a blank. Natchez, because that also helps your middle six. I don't know if he's a top line player. He's had 170-point season. He had 28 goals 2 years ago. This year, 24 goals, 53 points. I do think there's room for growth and improvement. He just turned 25. Like, I do think he's someone that can stabilize that middle six and provide some scoring depth, which is what we talked about was one of the biggest flaws in the playoffs, was they didn't have any other scoring depth. I think that's someone that intrigues me. But I think if I'm putting on my Gopher hat here, if I'm putting out a wish list player that I want and I would beat the drum for, and I've said this before, I'm trying to work on an in-depth story to piece this all together because I just have so many thoughts on this. I would go full on after Trevor Zegras. He's 23. I know we'll talk about
on this. You've banged this drum for a long time.
Yes, we'll talk about LaRue and Askarov and kind of how Barry Trotz does not like flashy, showy players and stuff like that. And Zegras definitely is that. But I mean, he's 23 and he's had 23 goal 60-point seasons. Like, you need someone at the top of your lineup that can go out there and put up goals, can put up points. And let's be honest, like, you may not like his personality, but when Zegras is on the ice, the defense has to account for him. Like, the forwards have to account for him. The goalie, everyone, he's one of those players when he's on the ice, you have to know where he is at all times. You have the cap space. I think when he signed his extension with Anaheim, it was $5.5 million a year. So he's not terribly expensive. $5.5 million a year for a 23-year-old potential franchise center, I think, is a steal. I think you put him on that top line with Forsberg. I know moving O'Reilly, breaking up that chemistry, kind of, we can debate that whether you want, or if you want to put him on the second line, you put Zegras on the second line with Luke Evangelista, that line is going to put up a shit ton of points too. So if it's me and I have the cap space and I have all these draft picks now, I mean, Zegras is going to probably cost a lot, but you have the draft capital to go out and get a player like that.
Let me ask you guys both real fast, just to clarify so everybody, because Natchez is a restricted free agent this year. So acquiring him, you'd have to trade, right, for the rights to negotiate.
Or you could offer sheet him. I mean, I know
Trotz
doesn't want to do that, but
yeah,
he wants out of Carolina. Doesn't sound like Carolina's really interested in retaining him, so I doubt they would match an offer sheet, and they might just take the draft pick. Or Trotz, if he doesn't want to use the offer sheet, he could be like, hey, we know this player wants out. I'm going to offer you this for him.
So give me quick ballpark trade for both. I mean, they're very different values because you trade with Zegras. Zegras is getting $5.75 million. He's going to be under contract for another year. So and then he's an RFA after that. So you have different acquisition costs. And then what do you think give me quickly, like, what you think you can acquire the rights to negotiate with Martin Natchez for a draft pick, and then he gets how much money? What's his estimated contract? And obviously you got one more year of Zegras under contract. So acquiring him is even, that's even different.
Yeah. Give me a second. I'm trying to look up Cat Friendly to see what Natchez is.
He was 2 year, $6 million deal. Was his last year deal. I'm assuming he's in for a large pay raise. The question is how much?
I think if you trade for Natchez and you pay him between $5 and $6 million, I think that's reasonable. I wouldn't do like a 5 or 6 year deal. I would maybe do a 3 or 4 year deal at $5.5 million. I'd be comfortable with that, just because, like I said, he could be a good top 6 player, but he's really only had one really good season. But the potential's there for that you've seen. Like, the potential's there for him to be a quality scorer, a quality playmaker. So I would probably be comfortable at 3 or 4 years at $5 million. And I would, as far as a trade package, it's probably going to cost, at least a first or a second round pick. I would say 1 first round pick or maybe 2 second round picks, and then it's going to be a prospect. So probably, I don't know, someone like Mark Del Gaizo. I can't think of any forwards that. Okay. It's going to be an A or a B level prospect, and probably a draft pick or 2 draft picks for Natchez. He's going to be a lot cheaper. For Zegras, because he has had more success, he is a scorer, he has the name value.
His contract's he's going to get paid, man.
He's going to get paid too, but it's going to cost more. You're probably looking at a first round pick, and then you're probably looking at
salary.
Yeah, I mean his salary after that's going to be probably $6.5 to $7 million, and it's probably going to cost you someone like, I don't know, a Matthew Wood maybe. It's gonna cost you a prospect that's gonna hurt. But I think because Zegras is proven and we know what he can do now, I would take that over what Matthew Wood could potentially be. I also have questions about Matthew Wood skating, so I wouldn't hesitate trading him because I'm not sold on him as a bona fide prospect. But as a scorer, yes, Matthew Wood has great potential, but his feet are so slow. I don't think he's going to be a top line center, or I don't think he's going to be a top line player at all. So I wouldn't hesitate trading Matthew Wood for Zegras. But if it's going to cost you Kemmel, or if they ask for someone like Stastny or Molendyk, I probably wouldn't do it. But I mean, it's going to cost you a lot. So, but I think the upside of what Zegras is the kind of player I think that could come in and change this forward group for the better. I think Natchez will help. I don't think he's going to transform the forward group.
Sounds like we're all on board with the same strategy here, which is obviously add some offensive scoring power, maybe make the second line an official second line with somebody talented enough to sort of pivot that line, and then go get some defensive depth, which brings us to the starting blue line.
I'll just say before we move off, you sign Chandler Stevenson and trade for Trevor Zegras. There you go. You make both the top lines better, and you have a much better scoring punch next year.
I mean, if your three centers are Stevenson, Zegras, and O'Reilly, this team has never had that in their entire wildest dreams.
You have the cap space and the draft capital to pull it off. Like, just because you've never done something before, go do it now. You have the draft capital to go, and you have the assets to acquire Zegras, and you have the cap space to pay both of him and Stevenson.
So what Stevenson for? He's you said 2.5 last year. He's probably a $4 million player this year. Is that about right? You think that
I
is
pay him 4?
Okay, so if you pay him 4, you get 5.7 for Zegras for 1 year, and obviously the idea would be to sign him long term after that. But if you did, that's still that would be 9.7. That is still
cheaper than Mitch Marner.
$1.2 million cheaper than Mitch Marner. so I think there's ultimately your point. All right, blue line starting lineup. Like, obviously there's probably a piece here, but right now you've got Josi, Lauzon, Schenn, and Fabro, probably 4 of the 6 locked up spots for next year. Stastny seems like he probably is on that third pairing somehow. Mark Del Gaizo's got an option. It seems like they have to go sign somebody. And the question is, do you want to sign somebody that slots in at the top of that lineup? Do you want to sign somebody that slots in the middle, or do you want to slot somebody at the bottom? Cost is a big factor there. They have the money to go do it. But if they're going to upgrade the offense, maybe they need to go more bargain bin shopping on the defensive side. What do you think the starting lineup looks like on the blue line? And we don't have to spend too much time on it.
I really hope for Spencer Stastny's sake that he's not paired with Luke Schenn again. He needs someone. I'm not meaning to pick on Schenn, but he needs someone that is more of a threat with the puck scoring wise, because everyone knows Luke Schenn's not a scorer. Like, it's easier for them to go and for them to and Luke Schenn can absorb these hits because he's bigger. He's been doing it for a lot longer. His body holds up more. Spencer Stastny is a little bit smaller, and he's been hit several times, and he's had several injuries. I would like to see Stastny paired with someone a little bit bigger and probably a little bit more of a threat offensively. But I do think they need to upgrade size. They do need to upgrade some of the physicality. If you could find another Jeremy Lauzon, that would be great. I don't know if it's out there, but I think that if you're looking at what the blue line is, you're going to need someone to pair with Roman Josi that's at least, I don't want to say as physical as Lauzon, but that can at least hold his own, not get pushed around, not get pushed off the puck very easily.
Is it possible that they put those two together? Like
Schenn and Josi?
No, Josi and Lauzon. Move Josi to the right, play Lauzon with has he earned the right to at least compete for that spot?
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, you Carrier's probably not going to come back. That's who Lauzon played with all season long. McDonough's gone. It would make sense to pair those two together because you kind of have someone out there to have Roman Josi's back, maybe help him not take so many hits and stuff like that. It would make sense. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Stastny does play on the second pairing. I don't know who you would pair him with. Stastny and Fabro.
Stastny and Shea. I think you need to sign a top 4 defenseman.
Oh, you absolutely do, which is why I said go get Zadorov. I think if you and maybe that's just dreaming too big because Zadorov obviously is going to have a lot of suitors after the playoff run that he just had. But I think I would go Zadorov, and then my plan B would probably be Brady Shea. That it makes more sense to me because he can do some of the things that Ryan McDonagh did. He's got the size. Someone like that. I think if you sign, let's say Zadorov's off the table and you bring in Brady Shea, that makes a lot of sense with what you have. And then you can maybe possibly give a guy like Mark Del Gaizo. Like, I put the poll out there on Twitter. who would you rather see, Delgaizo or Ufko on the Predators next year? And surprisingly, Ufko is winning that 53% to 46%, but he's not ready. That was just a for fun exercise. Delgaizo is ready. I think if you bring Delgaizo up and you put him on the blue line, and then you sign someone like Brady Shea, like, it's obviously you're not going to be as good as you were this year because Ryan McDonagh is still a pretty good player, but it's at least better than what it's looking right now.
I still think, I don't know. My concern about either Zadorov or Shea is going to be the financial piece, because again, I don't want to overpay for a defenseman. And Zadorov was making 3.75. He's going to be in for a huge payday, like Mike said, after the playoff run he just had. Shea was making 5.25. I don't know that I want to pay that much for a defenseman. You just got rid of the Ryan McDonagh contract. Like, let's not do another one of those. So I don't know. I mean, it depends though on how, I'm like, sure, there probably are teams out there that will throw money at Zadorov. I just think that, I don't know. I think that
is he a righty, Zadorov? I don't have it in front of me.
I think so, isn't he?
I think
so. Give me 1 second.
I think the key is Yossi with free agent or Lozon with free agent, and then Fabro plays the other one.
No, Zadorov's lefty.
So maybe he's not the right. So then the idea is, I think you want Stastny and Shen as your third pairing. I think that's probably what you want to figure out.
Did you not listen to what I just said? That's not what you want.
Not what you want. I know that's what you said, but like, you don't. I don't.
In an ideal world,
unless Stastny's good enough to play top 4 minutes, then that's different.
In an ideal world, Luke Shen would not be on this roster next year. And again, I'm not trying to pick on him, but from a pure hockey standpoint, I don't see the value he adds. But you kind of need him right now because you just got rid of Ryan McDonagh. You don't have Tyson Barrie and you don't have Alex Carrier coming back. Like, he's a necessary evil right now. But in a perfect world, he wouldn't be on this roster next year.
I mean, I agree. That's why I was like, push him down to as few minutes as possible. But
then you're also pushing down Stastny's minutes, which is not beneficial.
But I guess the goal with him though is to, over time, he moves up the roster, right? Like, you need like an insurance policy here, not necessarily.
I mean, ideally, because I think based off of what we know right now, I think Yossi and Fabro is the top pairing next year.
That's what I've got written down.
They played really well together. It would make no sense to break them up. I mean,
Lozon and Shen is not that's not what you want as your second pairing. So that's why I say find a right-handed top 4 defenseman.
I also wouldn't be opposed to calling up Delgaizo and pairing Delgaizo and Stastny together. They played pretty well together in Milwaukee. I guess
Delgaizo can go. They can switch sides. Here quickly is, and not to belabor the defensive point, I think we all kind of agree. But and Montour has come up multiple times in the comments. Buster says Montour has the Bruno connection as well.
I really like Montour because he's kind of that gritty, nasty kind of guy you would want.
I agree. If he can stay healthy, very good addition to the team at the right price. Here's the interesting thing. Brian asks, and this is where I want to finish this conversation, where he says, okay, and he's talking about all of our free agent contracts and stuff, but it could be cap space for a Saros extension. So here's ultimately my point. $26 million. If you go $1 million for Sherwood, $4 million for Steven, just go with me on this. $4 million for Stevenson, $6 million for Zegras, which is what his contract is, 2.5 for 3 to Lankinen, and then $4 million. I'm going to put $4 million over the top for a top 4 defenseman, right? Let's just, $4 million could be high, it could be low, depending on what they do. They could go higher than that, they could go lower than that. But you start doing the math. All of those names I just said, you bring back Lincoln and Sherwood, you go get a defenseman, Stevenson and Zegras. That is $17 million. That still leaves you with $9 more million. I think the key, I still think you need to focus on, not you two, but fans, the $19 million pre-McDonagh contract, I think is still the number Trotz wants to work inside of, right? And he wants to have that $7 or $8 million in space, is my ballpark guess of how much space he would want. That gives him the ability to go get a contract if somebody wants to dump one. It gives him space to extend a couple players, whoever those players may be for him. There's a lot of things. So I think there's still a lot of money, even after you go do all this stuff. He's got to do something with it. You can't take it with you. So, all right.
You could potentially get an extra $2 million added to that if, depending on how the Ryan Johansson situation in Philadelphia works out too. If he ends up getting what was it, bought out by the Flyers, basically, like Philly and Nashville would split what's left of his contract buyout. So I mean,
sounds lovely.
You could potentially get an extra $2 million in there that you could work with. Just saying.
Hey, he's got to do something with all his money. He's got to do something with it. All right, we'll wrap up on this. Conference finals are set. Really exciting series in the Western Conference. Dallas and Edmonton. I believe one of us said it was going to be Dallas and Edmonton in the conference finals. I have no idea what I said about the Eastern Conference Finals, so don't go back and check me. New York and Florida, of course, will play. You got 3 1 seeds and Connor McDavid. It should be a spectacular conference finals. Whether you're a fan of these teams or hate these teams or whatever, there's going to be a worthy champion, which I always love when it comes to any sport. Whoever wins this tournament is going to have earned it and be a totally worthy champion. I don't know how everyone on this show, listening to this show, is not rooting for Edmonton. Not just
sure,
you three. I mean, everybody.
By the way, 2 of us said that it was going to be Dallas and Edmonton in the West.
Look, this is a petty show, and you have to self-promote.
I would like to point out that my cup final of Florida and Dallas is still very much alive as well.
There you go.
Yeah,
see,
mine is not. So
now we're there. See, now we're all being self-promotion and petty about it. I love it.
If you're the NHL, this is what you want. 4 of the best teams still vying to win the Stanley Cup, and you have your stars in Draisaitl and McDavid, and you want
New York and Edmonton. That is what you want.
And you have the underdog with Florida, because they're a good team, but I still feel like no one really takes Florida as seriously as they take New York or Edmonton as well. But like, I think this is probably the best Final Four they could have hoped for out of this season.
I don't disagree.
I'm about to invite a ton of hate from Braden and from the fans.
Love it.
I personally, I'm not actively against Edmonton in any way. I'm not like, oh, I would hate to see them win. It's not that. But in terms of who I'm rooting for, I am very vocally, actively rooting for Dallas.
Why?
Because I think.
Why do you hate Matthias Ekholm personally?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. He is the worst person ever. And I want to see him suffer. No,
super unthoughtful, never gave good answers.
No, yeah. Like never says hi to me when he comes back to Nashville. He's just a jerk. Yeah.
Just overall bad person.
Horrible. Certified bad dude. No. So that's the thing is like I love Eki and I love Matthias Ekholm and I would love to see him win. I also think it would be great to see, Draisaitl and McDavid finally, reach that point as well. Draisaitl, I think, has been better in the playoffs. He has been better in the playoffs than McDavid has. And I've always really liked Draisaitl as a player too. So yeah, I think it's again, I'm not going to be angry if Edmonton wins, but I'm rooting for Dallas because I think top to bottom, they have one of the deepest rosters, like the forward group. And yes, Josh, I know it was a nickname party. I'm sorry. Old habits die hard. But no, I think that I would like to see a team like Dallas win because I think that they are proof positive or would be proof positive of what we've been trying to argue, that you can win a Stanley Cup without having to do a full teardown and picking in the first or like picking in the top of the first round. I think that would go farther in proving a point that I happen to believe in. Plus they're a fun team to watch. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't like playing the role of Preds fan very often, but I'll just, since Emma's trolling on purpose, as you already alluded to, I just don't think there's zero redeeming qualities if you're a Preds fan for the Dallas Stars. Like, there's just nothing about them that you like in the division. Whereas the argument for Edmonton, not only from a skill standpoint,
you don't want to watch Ryan Suter go win a cup.
I actually, that's the irony of you bringing up his name is I think that's the one name that Predators fans are like irrationally hateful towards. Like, you would all take the bag. If somebody offered you way more money, you would all take the bag. I think what's best for the NHL, if you want to really step back, is Edmonton and New York. That is absolutely what's best for the NHL. It's putting the biggest star and the best
probably
player
from an entertainment value too. Like, they're probably going to put on the best series. But if you're a Preds fan, you absolutely do not want to watch Peter Laviolette go hoist another cup.
So I grew up a Rangers fan. My dad's a huge Rangers fan, and my wife saw the Final Four and was like, "Well, who are you rooting for?" And just as an aside, walking through the house the other day, she was like, "Oh, who are you going to root for?" And I was like, I mean, obviously, the Rangers are the team of the 4 franchises that I am most connected to. I grew up a diehard fan of Messier and Richter and Leach and Graves. Those were my guys. I love that those teams in the early 90s. Yes, I'm older. And my dad
You're not
is
that much older. I lived in New York when those teams were really good. So, I mean,
my dad's a huge fan. It would make him so happy. And I'm just like, I don't think I could get away. If it was any other human, I coaching that team, I could probably just be, it would be no holds barred. But I do want to see, I would be great to see Matthias Ekholm skate the cup around with Connor McDavid. That's it. Like that. If you're a Predators fan, you hate Dallas, you love Ekholm, you hate Laviolette. It's all very simple if you're a Preds fan. And also I think what's growing the game, what will grow the game is Draisaitl and McDavid and these guys being on a national stage in Madison Square Garden against a premier original 6 franchise, Canada, New York. Like, don't get me wrong, Florida and Dallas has a ton of like X's and O's schematic intrigue that is really interesting and is not going to get the coverage it deserves. It would be a great series, 2 of the best teams in the league this year. But what will sell tickets, what will draw ratings, what will elevate the product, it's Edmonton and New York, unfortunately, which, again, I don't know what you're rooting for, Michael, but that's
another little caveat to New York. You don't want to see them win because they also have Jimmy Vesey as well. But
that one I think is more. I think you have more of a right to hate Jimmy Vesey than Ryan Suter, honestly.
Oh yeah, Jimmy Vesey like intentionally led the Predators on. I don't think Ryan Suter did. I think he just took more money. I don't blame him, but
you can't leave this room.
If I'm picking who I would like to see win the cup, just because like I like a good underdog story, and I wouldn't say the Florida Panthers are an underdog, but out of the 4 teams, they're probably the least known. A lot of people, like casual NHL fans, know about the Rangers. They know about the Stars. Like they know about the Oilers. I would like to see Florida win the cup, just because I feel like they have a really good team, really good players, and it would be a really good story for the NHL.
Okay, I'm down.
And if we're going with pettiness, the whole argument that Braden just made about New York and Edmonton being what's best for the league is absolutely right. So just because I'm petty as a person, I don't want that because I just don't want New York.
Screw Gary Bettman.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I don't know. I hate it because it just perpetuates this idea of like, because I'm like, Mike, I like a good underdog, and underdog can mean a variety of things. Underdog can mean like a less traditional market like Florida or Dallas. Like I, as a hockey fan, like that, but and that's how you get those teams in like a bigger spotlight, and it gets rid of that. But anyway,
that's absolutely the counter argument, which is Dallas and Florida and growing the game south of the Mason-Dixon line is a priority for the NHL as well. But is it going to make them
say?
So they say. But either way, I think ultimately you can hate Dallas, you can root for Dallas, you can hate Laviolette, you can root for the Rangers, you can root for Ekholm, you can hate Connor McDavid and Draisaitl because they torch the Preds every time they play. I'm like, there's a lot of ways you could go with this. I have a feeling we're going to see 2 great series. We're going to see a great Stanley Cup final and a worthy champion. And at the end of the day, if you're a fan of a sport and you're being honest with yourself, the thing you want to see the most is entertainment and drama and excitement. And I think you should get that with these 4 teams, and that's ultimately the most important thing. And
if you're a Preds fan too, the good thing is there's drama and storylines with each of these 4 teams to root for or against them as well.
Yeah, no question. I am curious. The Florida thing is interesting because of Brunette's ties. Like and now my brain's doing like weird calculus, like Montour could be more expensive if they win the cup, and that's bad for the Preds. And I'm like, now I'm doing like weird mental gymnastics about what Preds fans could or could not root for. So, all right. Thank you guys all for hanging out on, of course, the in the comment section there. Eighth and Roast hanging out and supporting this show for this week. We do appreciate them. Go buy their beans and go check out one of their locations. Obviously, subscribe on the YouTube page. We're going to continue to do these episodes throughout the course of the summer. A lot of stuff, a lot of fun stuff planned for all of you Predators fans out there. So make sure you rate, review, subscribe on the podcast app, Twitter, etc. Give us a follow. Emma, where can people find you and find your work?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram if that's your thing. I post my work on both, but same handle both places, Emma_Lingan. And you can find my work at the Hockey News.
Mike?
You can find me on Twitter at MGSports_, and you can read all my work at Nashville Hockey Now.
There you have it. Again, programming note. We are all taking a week off from hockey. Hopefully Barry Trotz doesn't trade half the team between now and then. Otherwise, have a great week. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. We do appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much. For Emma and Michael, I am Braden. This has been the Gold Standard.